Okay. My name is Jared Witt, and this is for Soch 439, Dr. Bill Edwards, spring of 2009. My topic is an analysis of the conflict between Anonymous and the Church of Scientology using rational choice theory. So what is Anonymous? Anonymous is, in essence, a leaderless group of people who post on internet message boards and forums such as 4chan.org. I don't suggest going there. It's a terrible place. They typically spend their time creating memes, if you can really say memes are officially created, which are basically complex inside jokes that eventually make their way around the internet. Lolcats, which many people are familiar with, started as a meme from Anon. They also conduct pranks against websites and other internet communities, with one long-standing feud being against eBaum's World. Anonymous have been labeled cyber criminals since before their conflict with Scientology. On a more amusing note, they've been labeled things like an internet hate machine. So really, there's no way around it. Anonymous are not good people. They're generally knowledgeable about the internet, at least to the extent that they can crudely Photoshop pictures and harass people over the web. For the most part, however, Anonymous is kept to itself and out of public knowledge until recently. On January 21st, 2008, Anonymous decided it would become the guard dog of internet freedom and accused the Church of Scientology of censorship. Alright, what sorts of actions did Anonymous take against Scientology? Well, here's a quick rundown of what happened. I'm not going to get into all the details, but hopefully you'll kind of get the idea. In the beginning, Anonymous engaged in simple acts of internet bullying and disruption of Scientology websites. They used DOS attacks, which are denial of service attacks, prank phone calls, black faxes, and hacking into Scientology databases to steal classified documents. That sort of thing. Anonymous did succeed in bringing down the main Scientology website, Scientology.org, as well as a few other major Scientology-affiliated websites. The problem was that, 1. Anonymous would be hard-pressed to keep this sort of attack up for a substantial length of time. 2. The Church figured out their game plan and hired outside protection. And 3. The Church, which has a reputation for being harsh, to say the least, on its critics, decided to pursue legal action against the members of Anonymous. So, where did Anonymous go from there? Well, with the Church taking measures to stop further DOS attacks and such, as well as trying to get members of Anonymous arrested, Anonymous could either continue with its current game plan and escalate its illegal activities, maybe hacking into Scientology websites and such, or it could turn to more legitimate means, such as peaceful protests. Anonymous chose the latter. There are several reasons for this, which I'll get into. Why is any of this important? The importance of Anonymous's decision to assault the Church of Scientology via the internet is that the very existence of Anonymous, and then its decision to organize in such a way, is somewhat unique. One of the key factors in Anon's existence is that members are all the same. There is no personal identification, and they are all, in effect, anonymous. They all form a part of a singular entity. This makes organization different than most communities, as there are no official leaders or anything like that. Basically, there are low physical barriers to entry, as anyone who has access to the internet can go to any of the forums which are more or less linked to Anonymous. But in order to really associate with the group, one must be familiar with Anonymous's culture. In addition, I would say that Anonymous's organization to accomplish tasks is really more like a collaboration, with each member contributing a small amount to accomplish a greater goal. So now we have to think about what sort of decision-making process Anonymous members would have to go through before deciding to engage in such illegitimate activities as DOS attacks and hacking. The thing to remember here is that without formal leaders, actions undertaken by members of Anonymous were, for the most part, comprised of individuals taking action and then applying the name of Anonymous to themselves, labeling themselves as part of the group. There is no official membership outside of personal labeling. From the standpoint of rational choice, we follow the assumption that we as humans are for the most part rational beings, and that the decision-making process is composed of weighing pros and cons. Each decision of whether or not to engage in a behavior comes with determining whether that behavior is worth it in terms of cost-to-benefit ratio. When applied to criminology, the question becomes, do the gains from engaging in criminal or deviant behavior, in this case the gains being personal and moral satisfaction from disrupting Scientology, outweigh the negatives of being caught? This means that, in the case of Anonymous, members were unified behind a desire to, as is said in their video, rid the internet of Scientology's influence. While this may not seem like a huge personal gain, we must consider not only that moral gains can be pretty substantial, but also that Anonymous has a fairly large and devoted membership. Next comes the possibility of getting caught. When it comes to internet crime, the complexity of technology as well as a general lack of physical evidence makes the perception of getting caught seem pretty slim, or at least much more so than if one were to engage in physical crime such as property damage. Despite this, the Church of Scientology has actually been successful in bringing some legal action against members of Anonymous. Dmitry Guzner, an 18-year-old boy from New Jersey, was apprehended by law enforcement and convicted of unauthorized impairment of a protected computer, a felony. He's a described member of Anonymous, and his attacks were against the Church of Scientology. Guzner has since pled guilty to the charges. Okay, so we see that Anonymous members probably engaged in criminal activity due to the positives of committing these acts outweighing the negatives. What happened next? Well, as time went on, the Church brought legal charges against members of Anonymous with some success. Anonymous also met with criticism from some sources, even critics of Scientology itself, and were labeled as cyber terrorists. Anonymous also found itself being accused of religious hate crimes by the Church. This meant that the scales of rational choice began to tip in favor of no longer engaging in criminal behavior. Anonymous began organizing peaceful protests rather than continuing its campaign of DOS attacks against Scientology servers. As a group, Anonymous began to change its belief in illegitimate activities, with the negatives eventually outweighing the positive gains. From this point, Anonymous began to shift its focus towards public awareness of Scientology's shady background, and began a campaign to distribute information about Scientology's suppression of church members. One of Anonymous' first protests was called Operation Reconnect, in which protesters focused on raising awareness of Scientology's disconnect process. Anonymous has taken the route of many other critics of Scientology, accusing it of being a cult rather than a religion, and being fueled by profit. From there, an obvious step was to attempt to strip Scientology of its tax-exempt status by contacting the IRS, by contacting government officials. Also, I would say that one of the biggest blows Anonymous has struck against Scientology so far has not been hacking Scientology websites or DOS attacks, but has actually been the damage done to Scientology's image. By distributing information over the internet about some of Scientology's more malicious projects, such as their fair game policy or disconnect policy, or their aggressive persecution of critics, Anonymous has brought their fight to public attention in a way that looks bad on Scientology rather than allowing the Church to claim religious persecution. And now a little about me to wrap things up. I am not a member of Anonymous. I don't really like them because they are not really fun people. But any group that attempts to bring to public attention the hypocrisy of a church spawned from a science fiction writer, especially one with as much money and power as Scientology, deserves respect. Though their methods started out as less than legitimate, the protests now organized by Anonymous could hopefully have some effect on our social perception of Scientology and the influence it has on its members, their families, and society as a whole. If you're interested, you should check out some of these websites.